Okay, it looks like we have a good amount here. Welcome, everybody. My name is Heather Riggs. I'm with the New England Museum Association, and I'm just welcoming you to the October Lunch with NEMA. I want to make sure that everybody can hear me. So if you guys can hear me, can you say hi in the chat feature? Okay, I see a bunch of people that can hear me. Awesome. Hi, everybody. So as you just found out, that is the chat feature. So if you guys have any questions throughout the lunch, make sure to put that question in the chat feature there, and BJ or myself will interrupt Cinnamon and answer those questions. There will also be questions throughout, time for questions throughout the presentation. So with that being said, I want to welcome you guys all again, and also say thank you to Museum Trek for sponsoring our Lunch with NEMA series. You can actually see them at our annual conference in November. They will be in the exhibit hall. So we hope you will be able to join us. And then, BJ, I'm going to let you introduce Cinnamon.
Sure, thanks. Hi, everyone. This is BJ Larson, Deputy Director at NEMA. I'm very pleased to have Cinnamon with us today and thank her for presenting. Cinnamon Catlin Legutko is the President and CEO of the Abbe Museum in Bar Harbor, Maine. In the past, she's also served as director at the General Lew Wallace Study and Museum and the Miami County Museum. She's also one of the editors of the Small Museums Toolkit. So we really appreciate her being here today and helping us with our presentation. Thank you, Cinnamon.
All right. Well, thank you, BJ. I'm very glad to be here as well, and we'll get started. I'll tell you a little bit about myself to get us rolling, but I do want to say right up front that this is intended to be rather tongue-in-cheek with some heart. There's hopefully some humor that you'll have on your end, but I realize putting this together that I'm not actually going to see you laugh, so this will be awkward for me at many times, I know. But it is intended to be humorous as we move through this topic about shit I wish I'd been taught in grad school, quite frankly. And this topic is and thanks to Nathan Ritchie, who developed this session at the American Alliance Museum's conference in earlier this year in May. We presented in Seattle, and he's with the Golden History Museums in Colorado. So I was part of that larger panel, and then I was fortunate enough to be asked to adapt it to this format. So I've taken some of that and broadened it, and I have to say too that when we did it at AAM, it was designed to be Pechakucha style, which is very rapid fire. So what you'll see here are a lot of images and really snippets of information, but there is a handout that will be available that summarizes these topics in a very brief, accessible way. My plan today is to go over 4 topics specifically: how to work with boards, fearless fundraising, working with people, and how to stay sane. And each one is a mini presentation. We'll take a little break after each, and I'll do a poll to kind of get some feedback. There'll be some overlap in between them because really that's a key point in all of this. These are the soft skills that you really don't pick up in book learning that we're going to be talking about today. These are the interrelationships, how to work with boards, how to work with donors, how to work with colleagues. That's stuff that really relies on your personality too, but there are some tips that I think all of us can learn from and use to just make daily life a little bit better working in a museum. And I'll also say too that I'm speaking from the perspective of a museum director, but I've worked in other capacities. So hopefully no matter how, what capacity you're working in, you'll see some resonance. But at the end of the day, all of us have to at one time or another take on a leadership role. So maybe it'll be accessible to you that way. A little bit about myself. I went to grad school at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. As mentioned, this is my 3rd museum leadership role. My grad school program, I'm still so grateful for. It was a very practical, hands-on program. I had a mentor. I was taught by, well, actually the head of that department was a collections person. She was a conservator. So all of my training came through collections care, quite frankly, and that translated to how I learned about administration, fundraising, what have you. So that core of museum work was always in our training. But nevertheless, despite how practical that was, we didn't really get the chance to talk about how do you actually raise money? How do you deal with boards? In fact, I was a little afraid of them when I left grad school. And how do I even work with the people around me? So let's see what I've learned since then. But first, I want to do a poll to find out who I'm talking to. If I've done this correctly, you'll see a poll in front of you that's really just asking for large chunks of work. Do you work in administration? Are you in collections? Do you work in education? Or are you working in some other department in your museum? And we'll take just a minute for this to run. Hopefully everybody's seeing that. If not, just say so in the chat that you don't see the poll. And also, we do have the opportunity for you to ask questions throughout this session. And so feel free to put them in the chat, and BJ and Heather will be looking at those and making sure some of the big ones are rising to the surface for you to ask. And I'll try to respond to them as much as I can. So let's finish that survey. And we will continue here in a minute. This is my first time to use this survey, so you'll have to bear with me to make sure that went through, and we'll get a sense of who you are as we move into this first slide. I want to start today by asking you or talking to you about how to work with boards. In other words, how to work for 12 to 24 bosses. We're going to use Hollywood as our muse today. Tom Hanks is our guy to talk about board work. I think he's perfect. He's a symbol of demonstrating talent, showing leadership and grace under pressure. And he keeps a sense of humor. He's a man of the people. He's an everyman. So he's going to walk us through board stress, if you will. So what is the purpose of a board? I'm sure you all know, but just to be clear, boards have the role of oversight for nonprofit, fiduciary responsibility. They bring resources to the museum, they set policy, and they hire the director. Some boards will misconstrue this, but in the end, boards are supposed to be helpful, not harmful. And why do they serve? It's always for a variety of reasons. There's maybe a real interest, hopefully. They have an obligation, or they're looking to heighten personal visibility, or maybe just pad a resume. It's good to figure out what their motivation is. But for many, board members just want to be part of something. They want to be helpful and they want to be engaged. It's really important to keep that up in mind because at the end of the day, they're volunteers. And I found that when I remembered that they are volunteers, they're giving of their time, I could easily be more empathetic, easily be more patient, and be more innovative in how to get them to do their best work. It's very simple, but I think we forget about it when we think about duty, that board members are volunteers and they're giving their precious time. And it's important to recognize that whenever you can. But sometimes it gets really bad. It can get really dark working with boards. And I believe that 9 times out of 10, this is because the board sees its relationship with the director more like a parent-child relationship. I don't know about you, but I already have parents. I don't really need another set of parents. That creates unrealistic expectations. They won't expect the work to be done in the same way and they often want to control minutia. What it actually is, that relationship between the director and the board, is a partnership. And as the director, you know more about the organization than any board member, and as a staff member for that matter, you know more than any board member does about how the place operates day to day, the vision, experience, talents, what it's going to take. That's why they've hired the director. It's not about hiring a child, it's about hiring a partner. They may have some expertise, but they need to use you as a partner, not a micromanager. Another tip is to know that communication is critical. To ensure that partnership, you have to keep them informed. Regular updates in board packets, communication between meetings, don't save it all for a meeting. Maybe a weekly email with good news and updates is helpful. Make them experts, if you will, about the museums. And you'll show them that you have it under control, you'll build trust, and they'll be stronger advocates for your organizations. But what happens when the line is crossed? Maybe a board member is instructing staff to do specific work, maybe against the wishes of the director. You need to make sure as a leader that you talk to your staff and tell them to report these instances to you. And then work with the board chair to work with the offending board member or board members. The board chair must be your ally in this, and they can work as intermediaries. Also, be your board's compass. They need your help. Don't assume that they know how to behave as good trustees. Sometimes they don't have a lot of experience, or the experience they've had has not been on the best board level. They need professional development just like you do. Work with them to build them into active learners, and it'll make your job so much easier and you'll survive. And just know that they won't fundraise. Sometimes you get lucky and you'll inherit an awesome fundraising board. I hear it happens. I haven't experienced it yet. But until it happens, you have to carry the torch. You rope them in as much as you can. Don't leave it for them to do because they won't get it done. It'll just be the blame game in the end. You also need to make sure that they are developing as donors as well to the best capacity they can. And until they become that fundraising board, you have to carry the torch. And of course, be diplomatic. Remember to keep your cool during stressful meetings and interactions. Your board members are not always going to make you happy, even if they're talking about it as a partnership. They're not always going to make you happy, but it's important to keep your cool. Be respectful of different perspectives, listen to ideas, facilitate your way out of difficult conversations if you can. And if you need to have a difficult meeting with a trustee, have your board chair with you. Don't do it alone. Be sure you're part of recruitment. Work with your governance committee to identify talents and skills you need most. You need people who make the director a stronger leader, who support the staff, who build everybody up to their highest ability. So you need to be part of that conversation. You need to know who you're looking for and look for them all year long. And be an informant when officers are decided. Your board chair needs to complement your style. We don't need a board chair and a director going head to head all the time. That doesn't help anyone. You really need to have compatible personalities and be on the same page and have each other's back. That's what a partnership is all about. And of course, realistic expectations are always needed from both directions. Work with the board chair to develop evaluation processes for you and for the board. Partners evaluate each other and set expectations for the future. So make sure the board has their own evaluation process. It could be a simple one to start if they seem overwhelmed by that, and it could grow into something more comprehensive, but evaluation must be there. You also have to give the board tools to succeed. Clearly written board reports, well-organized board packets provided in advance, at least a week before meetings, careful orientation for new board members. All of these things help you, quite frankly, and help the organization. And maybe consider an online board resource where you can post readings, policies, updates. We here at the Abbey have a hidden website where trustees can access it with a password, and I can constantly put items up there that they can refer back to because they tend to be forgetful from time to time, and they can always go back and do their own research if there's a topic they need more info on. And here again, when times get tough, or when times are exciting even, stand your ground. When it gets tough, though, read the situation and know what your role is and the board's role. Do something each year to develop your leadership skills so you're strong and effective. And if you know that there's an issue that's going to push a button for you, prepare for it and have your calm and measured response at the ready. I swear that people, at least as boards come together, there's always one person that's going to push your button. And I have found that I just plan my meetings so that I can respond to that person's questions or issues, and I'm ready. And then it doesn't fluster me when I'm heading into a big discussion with the board. And at the same time, and this is some of the best advice I've ever had from a really strong board chair, is to know to be quiet. This is about diplomacy, but also it's about knowing that you don't have to have the answers for everything in a heated discussion, knowing that people need to be heard, people need to talk, knowing that you can be quiet, because if the chair is running the meeting as needed, or you're running a meeting as needed, everybody knows they get to have a say. And so you can stay still and quiet during those tense moments and insert your ideas when appropriate. And sometimes, though, you'll find if you're new to the game with that organization, maybe they're working out some old stuff and you don't want to jump into the middle of that because it's going to be on you. So just wait for all the chips to fall, if you will. It's tough. It's really tough to do, but know when to be quiet. And of course, professionalism wins the day. It always wins. If it's being compromised, if you're compromising your professionalism by working with an organization, you know then it's time to move on. And that's okay. But more often than not, if you keep that board inspired, informed, and engaged, you will have professionalism day in, day out, and you'll be able to lead the museum to fulfill its mission and goals. And honestly, the end game should be to become an award-winning museum. Make sure your community knows how strong your board is. Your donors need to know. They're looking who's on that board. They're looking for consistency. They don't want to see a lot of changeover and drama. They want to see a team that's united, a partnership working to benefit the nonprofit, that museum you're working for. And it's inspiring to see everyone working together. And it banks successes. People give to success. People want to be part of a winning team, whether that's a staff member, a donor, a volunteer. They all want to be part of a good story. So try to win some awards if you can to really put something on the mantle and get credit for that greatness. Be sure to nurture your leadership style in the middle of all of this. You need to take care of yourself and really learn who you are as a leader, attend conferences, go to classes. For me, I went through the Seminar for Historical Administration a few years back, and it really transformed my perspective on my leadership style, and I've continued to work on that. You can also develop a leadership network of peers that you like to chat with, maybe at conferences or by email or even locally. I, for example, have a local group I have breakfast with a few times a year to kind of touch base and see how I'm doing. And when you're strong, you will survive that that crazy role of working for 12 to 24 bosses. And then maybe not the most important thing, but I sure feel like it's important. You need to make the experience social. Have fun. Make it a part of your board agenda. Maybe you have a cocktail party after the meeting. Maybe during retreats you have time built in for socializing. We sometimes will start our board meeting with a little bit of informal cocktail hour and nibbles and time to get checked in with each other and see what's going on. So we all know that we're ready to be there and ready to do good work. We have a lot to do, and it's great to know the people you're working with and make sure they understand why we're all there. And that is my last slide on the board topic. And of course, there's a picture of me in time for Halloween, and that's a picture of me dressed as Static Cling on the far right. During grad school. So when I should have been learning all these soft skills, maybe I was actually. I was going to a Halloween party this time when I was in grad school. I do have a poll, and I'm not sure that the last one worked, but I will try this one to see if I have success. Give me 1 minute here to find it. Here we go. My question to you as we wrap up this board topic is, what's your biggest challenge working with your board? Is it they don't understand their role, or you don't understand your role, or they won't fundraise, or maybe board meetings are screaming matches? Hopefully that's not the case. But I will say my first museum leadership position, that was the case, and it was a reason why I ended up leaving, because they were dysfunction junction, and it wasn't going to get any better. Sitting in board meetings where trustees just yelled at each other wasn't really a productive place for me to be. So why don't you complete that poll? I see a lot of questions coming up in the chat. I love it. Somebody asked about the Seminar for Historic Administration. It looks like somebody posted a link to that program, so that's excellent. It's a 3-week immersive program produced by a number of partners, including ASLH, AAM, and others. And someone's also asked what my master's degree is in. It's actually in anthropology with a specialization in museum studies. And my undergraduate degree was in anthropology as well. So let me submit this survey.
All right, Cinnamon, yep, it's end voting. So we'll share with you.
There we go. There it is. So your biggest challenge for some of you all is, what's your biggest challenge working with the board? They don't understand their role. I agree. I think that is often what we behind that is fundraising. They won't fundraise. While I do think those two things are hand in hand, if they understood their role more, they'd see that they are supposed to bring resources to the organization. Doesn't mean they have to sit in front of their buddy Joe and say, please spare a dime, but it could be that maybe they get Joe to come to an event and see what you're doing, come to a program, and learn more. And then in the end, they become fundraisers. So really getting them some resources, some reading, maybe some group training, a retreat, to help them understand their role is probably the best first step if you're having a tough time. Good news is it doesn't look like you guys are suffering through screaming matches, so that's excellent. All right, let us move to the next one, which is a perfect segue, how to ask for money, otherwise known as how to talk to rich people. And we're going to use Jennifer Lawrence for this one, and I apologize if you don't know J-Law, because you really need to. She's quite the up-and-coming actress, award-winning, and she's the perfect symbol for fundraising. She's a girl on fire. She's also full of energy. She has the ability to share her personality when you see her in an interview. She's diligent. She's fearless. And again, if you don't know her work, I encourage you to see a few of her flicks, including The Hunger Games, which you'll see clearly I'm a fan of. So here's the bottom line with fundraising. You have to do it. You absolutely have to do it if you're in a leadership position. And I'd even argue if you work anywhere in a museum, you have to have a little bit of it in your operations. So get used to the idea. You may not like it, but maybe you could try. You may be surrounded by board members, like we just learned, who won't do it. You're not alone. That's sadly the norm. But as I said earlier, you can carry the torch until they can catch up to where you're at. So when you are fundraising, you need to be prepared. Before you ever get to the ask, you have a lot of preparation to do. Make sure you have a good cause. People don't often give just because it's a good cause, but it does help. It's a very competitive world, though. There's a lot of great things you can give to. So do your homework and find a project match for a donor, and make sure you report the impact of that gift to the donor when the project is completed. So preparation is key. But never underestimate personal relationships. People give to people. You may have a compelling mission, and it's the people who have the opportunity to bring resources, volunteers, and network, and open doors to a new donor. So use them well. Sometimes you may have a donor who really doesn't know much about what you do, but they are passionate about the people that work there, and they're inspired by what you do, and they want to give to that. How we ask varies. It may be direct mail, it may be face-to-face. Direct mailings work really well for membership and annual fund, or if you're just getting started on something and you want to get the word out, direct mails are key. But if you're going for larger gifts, face-to-face is always the best, and asking for a specific amount for a specific thing. And know your prospects. Do as much reconnaissance as possible before asking face-to-face. Know the individuals and corporations and connect what matters to them. Do they have a passion for education? Ask them to fund educational programs. Are they a collector? Asking them to donate to a Friends of the Collection Fund. And make sure when you're working with donors to develop your small talk. There's nothing more awkward than big, large gaps of silence because you don't know exactly what to say. So whether you're doing stewardship, making somebody feel really good about their gift, or asking for something specific, don't forget to be human. Read the cues and work in some small talk so they can learn about you and you can demonstrate that you care. And really try to avoid that whole foot and mouth situation. Have some standby topics if it runs dry. A friend of mine who runs a library, her big standby is, I can always ask what the last book was that they read or what their favorite book is. So you can always ask working museums, what museums have you visited recently? What great exhibits did you see? What have you thought were the most memorable moments when you've been at a museum? That always helps you move that conversation forward. And fundraising is about telling your story and convincing the other person to join you in the story. And of course, you have to believe in your story first. Make sure you're feeling good about your work before entering the room. If you're really burnt out, it will show. But simply put, fundraising is storytelling, and you've just got to convince somebody to be part of it. And you also have to be a good investment. People are not interested in giving money to pay the bills. Some will do that, sure, but not enough to pay all of the bills. It's not very sexy for the donor. Like I said earlier, people want to be part of a winning team, and especially donors. You need to be seen as a good investment. Success breeds success and draws in more donors. And in fundraising, no is oftentimes a maybe. After you've told your story and directly asked, will you help my museum today by making a gift of $5,000 to support a teacher training program? They may say yes, because the hardest part is just getting in the room. Percent of your trouble is just getting the invitation to sit down with them. If they say no, ask when you can call again, because it's actually a maybe. They're interested, but it's just not that time. So don't give up. And honestly, talking to the super rich can be very odd. It can be. And I apologize if I offend anyone, but don't worry. There may be a time when you can inject small talk, but with people who are raised to be philanthropists, this is a drill for them. They may not be forthcoming with their personal info either. It's not you, it's them. And a great resource for really understanding the mega wealthy is this great blog called The Billionaire's Butler. You can Google that, Billionaire's Butler, and he writes about the things that wealthy people are very interested in are not always going to align with the things you think you need to make a case about for fundraising, much less small talk. So there can be disconnects, and don't worry, that's normal, but you need to keep at it. And when you make an ask, make sure you leave something behind. So have some materials that are mission focused that you leave behind, maybe some kind of brief about the organization with images of happy people engaged in your mission. Certainly your business card. Don't overdo it. You don't want to inundate them with material. You want to leave them curious, resourceful, but not overwhelmed. And you need to show gratitude in many forms. Be grateful during donor meetings. Handwritten notes followed by a formal receipt is really helpful. Of course, it depends on the size of gift. Maybe a $10 gift doesn't require the same full court press, but certainly larger gifts do. Give an update on the impact over coffee, or send a report, just as you do for grants, to show impact. It's really key to understand what donors prefer. They've made a choice to be supportive of you. It's not their obligations, so be grateful. And honor all size of gifts. Just as I mentioned before, that $10 gift, maybe it doesn't need 5 thank you notes from a bunch of trustees and staff members, but it does need gratitude. That $10 gift is just as important, in my opinion, as the $1,000 gift. You just have to thank them in different ways. All of those come together to make your job possible, and you never capacity of an individual, and don't assume. And most importantly, a $10 gift from someone may have been a sacrifice for them, and it's worthy of your gratitude. Keep your promises. Once you get that gift, do what you promised. You have to do it. Even if you run aground, you need to make sure that donor is aware of what's going on. One broken promise is more destructive than you can ever imagine. It has a radiant effect. So be sure to ask for the right things. And if the scope changes, don't worry, just communicate and keep them in the loop. Bring in new people. You need to be thinking about who isn't giving, what sectors of people, what ages, what backgrounds. If the entire donor pool is over 55, you're doomed. You've got to keep changing it so that you can move through it. Start doing programs and exhibits that connect with broader audiences. Be seen in the community and meet people every chance you get, because you'll turn them into donors. Really big gifts are always easier, which is surprising. Getting a $25,000 gift is so much easier than gathering $50 gifts for the same project. Once you're in that room and you've got the right match and the right prospect, asking for $25,000 is honestly a piece of cake and requires much less time. A big ask can often just require a phone call and email to set up an appointment, and preparing a folder of info, and get your suit on and you're good to go. Keep in mind too, grants, they're wonderful, they're awesome, but they only buy you time. So be forewarned. Yes, they're excellent for special projects, capacity building grants, but they don't make you sustainable. Time will run out on that. You must have available gifts along with revenue mix, endowment, diversified income, if you will, sustainability. And as I promised earlier, honestly, development is everyone's job. Everyone helps with this work. Each person who enters the museum should be treated like a donor. Kindness and responsiveness is key. And in fact, I took a page from John Durrell's book, John and Anita Durrell's books, actually, that says every job description should list development as a duty. And we have that on every job description, whether you're only working in education or only working in collections or a very specific job title, you still have a role because you never know when that donor around or in the community or someone you can connect with. So being up on development goals is key. And make sure you have fun. I love fundraising individually or personally. There's a rush when you get the appointment and the excitement is there when you make your case. I believe in percent and it's a thrill to convince others to believe. So you have to remember to have fun while you're at it, or you might as well just go home because we all need to be involved in fundraising. We truly, truly do. And with that, we're going to finish this module and do another poll. When it comes to fearless fundraising, what holds you back? I don't know how it's done. I'm waiting for my board to get going. I don't know how to make a case for my museum, or we just don't need money. Believe it or not, some people may think that, but I have a feeling that's not likely the truth. You probably need to need some cash at some point. And also, there's a key strategy in fundraising is that periodically you need to reach out and have a campaign because it re-energizes your base and helps people remember while you're there and they're part of it and they can contribute. So you really, quite frankly, always need money. So hopefully that's not the answer everybody goes with. So let's finish the survey there. And I know that we need to share that back out. And I will say, Heather, I don't see the button for sharing that out. There it is. So when it comes to fearless fundraising, what holds me back? The top choice is I don't know how it's done. Interesting. So I feel like that is probably a very common response because it is such a soft skill. You could go to some courses and see some book learning. Development fundraising is pretty straightforward, but you have to have the aptitude for it. You have to have the energy for it, and that I think confounds you if you're realizing it's something I have to do, but it's not something I feel I'm able to do. So really trying to get the right people out there fundraising is key. Maybe you take a board member with you that has high energy, or even another staff member who's got a lot of personality and you feel like they can help communicate the mission. Because I do think you really can learn it, the basics, through straightforward book learning and sessions and other ways of participation. So moving to the next section is how to work with people, otherwise known as Don't Be Michael Scott from The Office. This one is tough because I personally am, this one and the next one actually, I am an extrovert, and so I really enjoy being around people and getting engaged in ideas and working through things as a team. But sometimes being around people too much can really rub you raw. And when you're in a leadership position or you need to mentor somebody, it can become very taxing. And you have to remember some things to be effective every day in working with people. And I want to say, too, that I'm not offering legal advice here. I'm offering advice that will hopefully help you remain productive in the workplace and will help you keep your humanity intact. That's my goal with this section. And of course, we're going to have Steve Correll help us through this topic. So number one for me is build a team. I can't urge this enough. Very few of us work in an environment where we only wear one hat. We need to rely on each other's teammates. Many people aren't able to be team members, though. Figuring that out in the hiring process is key. You can certainly bring in staff development opportunities to create team members and make them the best employees possible. And one of my favorite references or books in the world on this topic is 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. He really gives you some insights about teamwork and strategies to get going. And I'll say that again. The book is 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Really great way to kickstart team development. Hire people based on needs. And if you can, have a strategy understood so you know what you're looking for. Just like in board recruitment, you know the type of person you're looking for a particular position or a particular team dynamic. It requires that you know exactly who's on your team. Take time to get to know people and observe their work. When you have a vacancy, think about what you really need and what skills you're looking for, and let that determine the position you're posting. Fund professional development. It's always the first thing cut when it should be the last thing cut during tough times. Staff, they always need the opportunity to get out there, learn new things, hear from colleagues, and really connect. If times are lean financially, maybe pay for a series of webinars or find a series of free ones like this one. Encourage staff to go network with local professionals. Maybe bring a trainer in-house and partner with a nonprofit to share the load. But no matter what, make cutting staff time the last decision you make when budgets are coming together. Investing in the staff promotes confidence and loyalty, and they're just better employees in the end. And I often say here at the Abbe, we're really looking to develop leaders in this team. I, as the leader here, really want to be a leader of leaders. And so we send people to staff training for leadership. What happens in the end is that you receive the benefits of their leadership training. All of that comes back to roost while they're with you, and they also develop loyalty in being there. They may leave, and that is understood, but really investing them helps you share the load, helps them understand where you're coming from in leadership, and builds leadership within your bench. This is something I try to think about a lot. Use we to describe work, and use I when you're taking on. And that's really critical for team develop to use we. We do this, we do this, we do this. As a leader, if I said all the time, I did this, I did that, I'm not going to have a lot of people following me. But I is important when I'm sitting in a team meeting, we're working on a project, and I know I can do something, and I know that it matters for people to volunteer to do work. Very clearly stating, I will take this on, I will call this donor, I will lead this event is when I is important. Otherwise, talking in we really helps build the team ethic, especially from the leadership perspective. Also, be real and accessible. Show your human side. People respond to the real you always. If you're in management, it's exhausting to keep up a personality at work and then maybe change it at home. I know some people that do that. It's exhausting. Just do your personal work, understand who you are, and you'll save tons of energy by taking that same person at work and at home. Use humor whenever possible. Seriously, it's okay to be funny in meetings and in the office. Maybe keep it in check so you don't get too far afield, of course. But it's a quick way to diffuse tension and to promote camaraderie. Maybe watch out, though, for too many inside jokes because new people will feel excluded or it translates into other work opportunities. But use humor. It's the quickest way to bond people together. Introduce big ideas. Find ways to stretch your mind and get out of the box. Encourage the imagination. At the Abbe, we're often looking out to other sectors for big ideas. And coming up here this November even, 4 of us are attending our local TED event, TEDx Dirigo. And we'll be sitting there listening from all kinds of representatives in Maine talking about their work and inspiring ideas. And we'll return with all of this fresh thoughts that churn up even bigger ideas for the work that we do. So keep those ideas going. And know the law. Seriously, seriously, seriously. If you're in management, you have direct reports, you've got people to manage, you need to make sure you have some training in HR. And at the very least, make sure someone on the team is on top of all of the employment laws in your state, as well as at the federal level. You've got to make sure you're aware of the law. Never miss coaching or mentoring opportunity. As you create or contribute to a positive and supportive workplace, you'll start to attract great people, and you want to develop them as professionals, perhaps as leaders. If you're conscious of coaching, you'll be able to observe how your team is developing, and that loyalty will continue. And it's just great to be a sharing type of person, to share of yourself. It really goes a long way. Keep your cool. You can see where the overlap happens with all of these topics. It's very valuable to keep your cool, and it's really hard to do it sometimes. But if you overreact, you'll either cause others to overreact, or worse, panic, and then you're miles away from the solution if everybody loses their heads. And with that, I also say be solution oriented. In any situation, think about the solution as you're considering the problem. The more solutions, the better. You can rack them up and use them later if you don't use all those solutions. I really believe you can never have too many solutions. And in fact, when I hire people, that's one of the things I'm always asking questions about, is how solution minded are you? Have empathy. It's important to remember that your colleagues are people with feelings, with personal lives, with goals and dreams, and sometimes they may be dealing with tough stuff, and you may be dealing with tough stuff, like a sick family member, personal loss or illness, divorce, and they may need some time off or just simple understanding so that they can regain their strength and be the best employee or teammate possible. Nurturing that whole person makes for a positive work environment for everyone. And hand in hand, be aware. Pay attention how people work best together. Who's clashing, who meshes, and build those work teams accordingly. Yes, people are supposed to work together, but if you're aware of how people work best, you'll get the most out of everyone. Hire people different from you. When you interview folks, it's really easy, if you're lucky, to have a rapport with a candidate. But be sure to assess before extending an offer to make sure that you're not hiring another one of you. You need to hire outside of your skill set at times to make sure you have the best bench strength you can gather. Take a walk. This is something I wish I would follow
Cinnamon,
more
that's
often.
a good.
Whenever you get hot under the collar and you're seeing red, you want to just scream. You're getting frustrated how things are coming together. Take a walk around the
Cinnamon, I
block
got it.
before confronting the issue, which you have to do. Also, if a decision is needed and anger is clouding your vision, take a walk to clear your head. Develop your personal style for critical and difficult conversations. I know we all kind of probably dread confrontation, so the more you know about yourself in confrontation and develop that approach, the better. Spend some time in training dollars to develop your management style. Take a vacation. It sounds simple, but you've got to take vacations. Schedule time away, turn off your email, and keep in mind, this is something I have to really remind myself too, traveling to see family isn't always a vacation. If you need to take a cruise, take a cruise. If you need to go hide out in the woods somewhere in a cabin, do it. Maybe it's only a couple of days, but make sure you get that chance to break away from the daily grind. And own your vision. You can't realize something you don't own. You've got to own what the vision for the organization is and how it needs to move forward. Think about it, write about it, talk about it, own it, and you'll move further faster. That's the end of that segment. I am going to skip us ahead, just for sake of time, to the fourth segment so that we have plenty of time for questions at the end. The last topic I want to cover, which goes very well with what we just talked about working with people, moves more into the personal individual self, keeping sane. And we're going to use Tina Fey for this one, who's highly accomplished, comic, writer, producer, actor, mom, wife, you name it. And through her characters, I think she can show us the importance of keeping your sanity for work and for your home, and keep everything in balance. The first one is self-awareness. This refers back to the need to do personal work. Find out what your strengths are and your weaknesses, and make sure you build your team around that, build your work life around that, so that you can be your best person. And make sure you're doing leadership assessments, maybe a 360 review. You're doing readings. I know for a fact that there's two things I have to do often is to reduce drama And remember to be human. Those are the two things I have to focus on as a leader. And I do a lot of personal work to make sure I can keep it together. But I've got to reduce the drama and be human. Document the moving parts. You can become quickly overwhelmed, so making lists are key. And I think this is another straightforward topic, but it's okay if you have a list about a list about another list, so be it. List making really helps you solidify thoughts and ideas and makes them visual, and then you're more likely to work around them, work toward them, and make things happen. Live your vision. I've talked about a vision for your organization, but what about a vision for your personal life? What helps you with work-life balance and keeps you on track? And then share that vision with your family, your significant other, your friends, your coworkers if you have to make sure you keep to it and that you're healthy. Find mental escapes throughout the day. Even if things are going well, make sure you take a little mind break and mentally escape and go visit somewhere mentally. Me, this is a little bit of honesty, I'm always traveling in my mind to the Roman pool at the Hearst Castle. It's the most gorgeous place in the world that's been built, in my opinion, and it was Cary Grant's preferred swimming location. So when I'm stressed, I'm usually taken off mentally to the Roman pool at the Hearst Castle to make it all better. But that's essentially a form of meditation in some ways. It really helps quiet the mind. This is another theme we've heard before. Learn when to be still. There are times when you want to dive in, get to the thick of it, and get messy, but sometimes it's not your drama, so you need to keep still and don't take on other folks' drama. This is really helpful to keep in mind during negotiations, staff meetings. You don't have to solve it all. Help others solve it around you, and it really creates stronger resolution. Seek and rely on training. This refers again to things like SHA, the Seminar for Historical Administration. I've revisited those learnings so much. I reach out to my classmates constantly. I'm very cognizant of my learning needs. When I moved to Maine, I went through another leadership class through the Maine Association of Nonprofits, and now my next step is to join a professional roundtable with the Durrells to develop my leadership style even further. So I've really identified my personal curriculum for leadership, and it's key to not give up on developing that. At the same time, keep fanning the flames of your passion, if you will. What is it that got you into this field? And revisit those thoughts before. I remember being the kid in my bedroom learning about the Rosetta Stone and thinking that's the most amazing piece of history learning I could ever imagine, and teaching myself hieroglyphics, really nerding out in my bedroom. And that's the stuff that gives me chills when I think about museums and the power of history and the power of art and all of those things coming together. Make sure you visit that often and remind yourself why you're doing the work. And always keep the monkeys in check. And this refers to an article by the Harvard Business Review called Who's Got the Monkey? It was published in the 70s, but it's an incredibly popular publication that they've republished. And it's the idea that during stressful times, your staff will want you to solve everything, and you can't do it. You need them to be solution-oriented and full of initiative. If you took on all of those things that they haven't resolved, at the end of the day, you're in an office full of screaming monkeys, and you can't solve them all. They just scream louder and louder. And of course, you haven't been able to do your work. So this is a little bit of a straightforward topic, but there's some great reading about this. I encourage you to look up the article, Who's Got the Monkey, and learn more about some strategies for dealing with employees who just can't take on resolution, and you need to be able to coach them through it so that they grow and that you are sane and your organization moves forward. This is a little phrase of mine that I want to talk about next. Squash shoulda, coulda, woulda. I don't know if you've ever experienced where somebody comes in, like a trustee or a volunteer, and says, you know what you should do, or could you do this for me, or would you ask them to do this? You need to be the one that delegates to be delegating to you. And this is related to the monkey topic. Because people are coming in with the shoulds and the woulds and the coulds. You end up with a boatload of ideas. I bet you already had some good ones. And you can't address them all. So people feel unheard, unlistened to, unresolved. And if you don't keep them in check, you're going to start snapping at people. And I'll never forget one time in my last job, I just couldn't take it anymore. And I snapped back to back at a donor, actually, I think, by saying, shoulda, coulda, woulda. And that was a time when I should have said, well, let me hear what you're saying. Let me take that in, instead of snapping back. I just couldn't keep it in check. Here again, humor is big for me. It's a good release. Be funny if you can, or at least know if you're not funny, or try to hang out with funny, because it really eases tensions. If you're really stressed out, don't watch a lot of dramatic movies at home or intense dramas. Maybe watch a little more comedy. Things like that really affect your daily demeanor. And have some empathy. Here again, people are worried about their kids. You're worried about yourself. You need to be empathetic for yourself, and think about what it takes to be sane in your daily life. Really give yourself credit for needing that personal attention, and you'll get further. Tune out is another topic. What if all the drama is swirling around you at work? People are getting hung up on negative topics and you can't quite get away from it. Close your door if you have one. If you don't, put the earbuds in, listen to music, and really try to check out of the arguments that you're so tempted to get involved in. Office politics can really take you down. This next one I really love. Perfect the art of the blow-off. So if you keep getting sucked into conversations with irritating coworkers, someone walks up to you and they want to get a rise out of you, it's really good to just say, wow, really, I need to get back to work. I'll see you later. Or, wow, that's interesting. I've got to go. And really diffuse the situation. Just don't give it energy. And if you're really feeling daring, maybe ask them to do something for you and they'll totally run away. You need to diffuse some of that drama to stay sane. And with that too, you can also break the bad mood cycle. Good moods are contagious at work, and so are bad moods. And you want to make sure that the good moods outlast more than anything. And moving away from the bad moods is critical. And so maybe, coming up with a counter argument when they keep working on the negative topics, coming up with a positive topic will diffuse it. Certainly you don't want to suddenly become disingenuous, but trying to diffuse it is key. Close the door at the end of the day. That means leave work, shut that door. Even if you feel things are unresolved, try to leave it at work or do your dead level best to resolve it before you go home. You don't want to take it home with you. You want to start the new day, the next day, with a clean slate and have a fresh start, because then the positivity will rule the day. And if you find that you're in a really toxic work environment and you can't get out of it, which it does happen, we all have reasons why we stay in jobs, and we never can say there's one reason why you should leave or stay rather. You can support a support group outside of the office to really help you. Someone to vent to, so maybe it's some friends, maybe it's other coworkers working in a tough place. You can save those tirades for those trusted audiences, and try not to overdo it, because then you don't want them to end up as frustrated as you are, but maybe they can help you in a support group work through ideas, issues, solutions even. And with that as well, get an outlet. You need something to diffuse your time. Maybe it's running, maybe it's going to the gym, maybe you knit, maybe you're a big reader, maybe you have some amazing artistic skill. You need to bury yourself in that after hours to kind of regenerate your core and return stronger to the office. And stay positive, even if you have to fake it. People know when you're faking it, but do the best you can to stay positive, avoid negative, and have a joyful attitude. And then for me, the most important thing at the end of the day is to remember who you are and keep those priorities front and center. And with this slide, this is my family. And when I think about who I am, it is always three things: mother, wife, museum professional. It's my mantra. It's my online motto. It's how I focus my time and my energy. And sometimes that museum professional rises ahead of mother and wife. And it's so evident to me that that's not okay. It's not a good strategy for living your life. So remembering who you are will really, truly, at the end of the day, keep you sane. So with that, I have finished with just 6 minutes to spare, and I certainly encourage questions, ideas, critiques if you want. If you feel like there's some things you could add to these lists, they are certainly not comprehensive. And like I said earlier, there's a handout that has these summarized into lists, and you're welcome to take that and read through it and follow up with me if you like. You have my email here on the screen. That's me. I took the Iron Throne at AAM this year, which is a reference to the Game of Thrones. So you can see that Hollywood's a big deal for me. It's probably one of my biggest escapes to help me manage the stress of life and leadership. And I encourage you to find those outlets as well. Some good questions coming here on the chat. Career or job searching advice for emerging professionals. I cannot say enough about networking. I cannot say enough about volunteering. If you feel like you're just not getting those opportunities put in front of you, find ways to give of yourself to help with a larger national issue, be part of a campaign, a local museum may need you. I realize that you may have to have another job while you're waiting to really build that key career moment for yourself, but it really is about networking and giving of yourself to build that professional career.
There was a question, Cinnamon, about does anyone have any tips for developing vocabulary for talking with museum higher-ups? Do you have any suggestions on that one?
So any tips for developing a vocabulary for talking to higher-ups? Well, that is a really good question, because so if I were to think about it from my perspective, what I respond to is when someone comes into my office and says, I have an interest in this, I feel like I can accomplish this for the organization. When it's very volunteeristic, I think I can do this, and I think will result with this positive end because of it. Let me have that opportunity. I respond to that really easily. Where I start to distrust and have concern is if you don't deliver. I hate to say that I'm a results-driven person, but it really does matter. You can have all the best ideas in the world and present them in enthusiastic ways, which is the way you should do it, but you got to deliver those results. So committing to a timeline in that meeting or in that conversation and saying, and I can have it to you by this time, that kind of language gets you further faster. Results-driven, volunteeristic language. Do you have some other ones, Heather, that you've seen?
Another one?
Yeah.
Yep, and then since you are an extrovert, how do you best work with introverts?
That's a very good question, because I think I work best with introverts, and I have both on my team here. I work best by understanding their strengths. So, if you're an introvert, it may mean you don't want to really hang out with people, but it certainly can mean that you are processing internally and getting further fast. You know how to isolate your work and get down to the basics. So I read the cues on introverts. I can come across a little too aggressively. I'm constantly paying attention to the social cues, the nonverbal cues, to see if they're needing to withdraw. But I also just manage my time so that I'm not spending excessive amounts of time with introverts. I have found too, though, that if you're really thinking about a balanced team, a balanced work environment, introverts and extroverts can attract each other because they realize that they need something from each other. And I think as you build that conversation around who we are as individuals, it does resolve itself. Any other questions, Heather? Doesn't sound like I'm hearing you, Heather. So hopefully everybody else
what's
is
happening?
There we go.
Actually, Cinnamon, we do have. Yep, Cinnamon, we do have a question. I think what do you say when a board member makes a suggestion, but you've already tried it and it didn't work? That is, they weren't paying attention and thinks it's a new idea.
Yeah, well, certainly a smile gets you further. Yeah, a smile will get you really far. Maybe when they're talking, it's really hard not. for example, I don't have a good poker face. Like if you're saying something insane to me, it's really difficult for me to not show you how insane you are with my face. So being aware of that helps. Looking open and listening and knowing that when you're dealing with a board member, it is your most critical partnership ever. So knowing that their idea is something that's already been tried, of course, is key, and talking through it with them and saying, I hear what you're saying. I think we tried this a couple years back. Help me understand what you're proposing is a little bit different, because I think maybe we'll find resolution in the middle. Like keep thinking about the middle. And oftentimes they'll be just fine. They'll be reminded because they don't remember as well as you do. They just don't, because they have full lives outside of your organization. You're living and breathing it, but your board members have full lives outside, so they're just sometimes not going to remember it. So defaulting to the positive reason for their redundancy is a good start. Do we have time for one last question, Heather?
Donor meeting ask.
Well, I am not hearing Heather. We're at the 1 o'clock. It sounds like we are not working well with our audio. So just in conclusion, I really appreciate all of these questions, and I'm seeing a lot of good development questions. Feel free to email me about those, because I really enjoy helping people fundraise. I think it's an important skill that we all need to develop. I have written about fundraising. I wrote a chapter in the Small Museum Toolkit called Fearless Fundraising. But at the end of the day, remember that with fundraising, it is about storytelling and getting people to be part of your story. And it's about relationships. So thank you, everyone. And thank you. I see you all in chat saying thank you and signing off. Have a great day.
If you can hear me.